Highway 60 eastbound, heading for Riverside and the Marchfield Air Museum. That's what the landscape looks like around here. And here we are at Marchfield Air Museum.
Arriving at 22550 Van Buren Boulevard on the left.
And here we are. This base used to be March Air Force Base, and now it's some sort of a like Air National Guard base or something. It's not regular Air Force, but they do seem to operate a lot of C-17s out of here. Every time I've been here, it seems like they're constantly taking off and landing. And we'll get to see some of those across the field once we're in the museum proper. No backpacks, no camera stands, no pets. This is one of the drones that was intended to be carried on a SR-71 spy plane and launched from there. I don't remember the designation. Well, it says there it's a D-21 drone, so I guess that's what it is. This is a North American T-39A Saberliner, used primarily as an executive transport by the Air Force. I remember this one having the swirly windows. Everybody else has round or rectangulars, and these guys have got these rounded triangular windows. Most of the collection here is outdoors, but they do have a couple of hangars. One of the nice things about this museum is, unlike some, most of the aircraft are pretty much what's the word I want? They're not isolated from the visitors. You can walk around under pretty much every one of them. And they have a nice variety as well. Hours 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. every day except Monday. General admission $10. Just start over here on the side. It's a little mock-up of a commercial airplane with the video of the safety presentation. I don't recall this being here when I was here last. I think this is something that's fairly new. But they have the aircraft structure, which is something you don't get to see every day. See just how they're built. You've got this bit more than a 1/16 inch thick aluminum skin riveted onto a series of stringers, and that in turn connected to the circular members, and that's really what makes the whole structure of the fuselage on a typical aircraft. And it shows how the relatively thin plastic or metal or whatever that is cosmetic shell is installed, and the overhead storage area and the little area where they keep the mechanisms for the lamps and air vents and so on. It looks like they give you the flying experience here. For those people who've never done it for real, that's not bad. A couple of rocket engine bells here. Nothing I see mentions which rockets they're from. There's something here. So, space shuttle main engine exhaust nozzle. So apparently that's what that one is. This mission control is supposed to be something that's fairly new.
Oh, I think I crashed.
Well, you're just not on the runway. Oh, you bounced.
I know, I'm bouncing all over the place.
Oh, you're doing better than I would. Oh, yeah, they're so delicate.
Some samples of typical wooden aircraft wing sections and their structures. an OXX6 Curtiss Aero motor. And it's nice that when they retired the SR-71 fleet, pretty much any museum that wanted one and had the space for it was able to get one, because there's certainly a lot of them around.
Sunday was the day off. I remember about 2 weeks before the attack on Pearl Harbor, I received a message that said that the intelligence source that was trying to Japanese food, and we knew we figured they might be that. I was honest, we didn't know. So see, sent a message to us.
Pretty nice bit of model work here. This is obviously commemorating the Doolittle raid. This is an L5 Sentinel. Several nice exhibits along the walls. They've definitely beefed this area up since I was here last. There's more of this kind of stuff than there was previously. Now they've got another exhibit about Norma Jean, aka Marilyn Monroe, working at the it was the radio plane company that was run by Reginald Denny, the actor, making drone aircraft. And that's where Norma Jean worked when she was discovered. And this is one of my favorite exhibits here. They have moved it a little bit since I was here last. I think they used to have it over here. But this is a the nose section. Anyway, I got distracted. It's the nose section of a B-47 jet, which was a Boeing medium bomber. And this is the nose section that they got a hold of to make the movie Strategic Air Command with Jimmy Stewart, so they could film their cockpit scenes. Of course, that movie starts out with a lot of excellent B-36 footage, And then the second half of the movie is where Jimmy Stewart's character transfers to a B-47 early experimental type of flying and then operational flying. And so they had this one here so they could get the cameras in and show them sitting in the cockpits. And I can't get much more light there, but it's all radio equipment and so on behind the co-pilot's seat. And the co-pilot seat, you can see here, was on a swivel, so it could turn around and aim rearwards, and you can see there's a visor right there that the co-pilot could use when he was turned backwards, and that had to do with defense, I believe. They could operate some weaponry from that position. Anyway, so the controls are all here except for a couple of gauges which are missing. And even though the basic width of the pilot's position was not much different from a fighter aircraft, fairly constrained, the aircraft itself was bigger, and you can see here in the cutaway that even though they were up on top and it was narrow where they were, just a little bit below, the aircraft was considerably wider, and they had a lot of controls along the right side of the pilot's and co-pilot's positions, but the left side was just open, and that made a walkway with stairs, and here's the hatch that they would enter and exit with, and then the passageway continues at a slope downwards, and there's a bunch of instrumentation down there, and then way up in the nose, which I think we'll get a better view through the window up there, just not enough light. That's where your navigator would sit, right down in the nose. And it was possible for the crew to get out of their seats, and you can see there's a little built-in ladder right there to get up to this position. Both pilots had their throttle quadrants available and basically the same control capability. So this is a view you don't usually get of a B-47. That's one of the reasons why I like this display. Of course, the parachute pack and other things would fill this metal tray, and this was, of course, an ejector seat as well, so that you can see the ejector seat rails. And I believe that this black rail here is primarily, I thought it was a like a defroster thing, because it's perforated with holes, like they'd blow air out of it, but it's not clear where the air would come into it, so I'm not sure if that's its purpose or not. Anyway, so you can actually spend quite a bit of time studying everything in here. And then here's the window for the navigator. Getting very dim down there, but there's a navigation panel there with radar screens and things. that are hard to make out, but they're just below the opposite window. And for some reason somebody's put a dog in here. And then the guy's seat was there. I want to say that if this guy needed to eject, it ejected downwards. I don't think it went up. I think it did shoot down the bottom. It is on rails, so I just don't remember exactly how it's done on here. Anyway, it's a good display. And then they have some sort of mocked up crew stations. It's not clear to me which one this is supposed to be. I don't actually see, well, here it says T4 crew station. I think it's supposed to be related to the B-52, but so much of it's simulated here, it doesn't have enough detail. But I think all of these are supposed to represent stations of a B-52.
Another 5 minutes will decide the issue.
Can't get any better video than that, unfortunately. This is the CQ-10A Snow Goose, a multi-purpose unmanned aerial vehicle for precision delivery of cargo. And they have a little video showing it in action, transporting it around and so on. I want to say this is a gnat. There's no signage for this one. There is a Predator unmanned vehicle hanging above. And this plane is a P-69. And that's supposed to be a P-39. I think I already mentioned the L-5 that's hanging up there. And I missed this one as I walked under it. This is a Newport 11 in a pretty extreme bank angle. And of course the SR-71. Not sure it really needs the ring of LEDs around the engine inlet, but there's some instrumentation and so on visible there, with the panel removed. I didn't notice it, but they have Strategic Air Command movie playing on the monitor there. I'm not sure it's the whole movie or just excerpts. This is a very bouncy and unstable feeling portable staircase. An AG-330 start cart, which I believe they used to start the SR-71, and they had two big automotive engines connected up together, and they coupled them together to provide the starting power for the jets. So they were started with this. The cart consisted of twin high-performance large block V8 automobile engines coupled to a rotating shaft. The shaft connected directly to the starter shaft of the J58 engines to spin them up to their starting speed of 3,200 RPM. So we'll enter the Milestones in Military Aviation Gallery. Nice display of uniforms.
Dogfighting was done close in with guns. As the missile age dawned, air combat became a more remote experience.
They're saying this is General Curtis LeMay's uniform. I'm not sure if it's supposed to just look like it or if it's one of the ones he actually wore.
Became a mandatory tool of modern air combat as dogfighting slipped beyond the range of human vision.
Both the U.S. and the military's aircraft had IFF systems which were transponded.
This is a service dress uniform from the United States Army Air Forces during World War II.
Red and blue. Because the worst thing you would want is for a blue friendly to shoot down a blue friendly, which actually did occur a couple of times in the Vietnam Air War.
A transponder inside the plane is set with a code that transmits a certain frequency. If you're not squawking the same frequency, you're probably not a friend. When used in conjunction with E-3 Sentry AWACS planes, IFF was highly effective, making DVR kills possible.
With your setup, you would make sure that the AWACS understands what
This is a POW uniform of the kind issued by the North Vietnamese to U.S. prisoners.
January 26, 1991. 4 F-15C soar over western Iraq. The flight lead is Captain Rory Drake with his wingman, Captain Tony half rotation. If he runs,
Now this space has usually got a bunch of aircraft in it, but they took them out because they were using this space for something else. And they have not been moved back indoors yet. So this is a copy of a Wright Brothers flyer. I think this is a P6 here. So you have to imagine this room full of airplanes. That's what's usually going on here. Yeah, it's a Curtiss P6E Hawk. And there's a TG2 glider hanging up there. So let's go outside. Well, let's walk over here and see the helicopter display first. It's supposed to be Firebase Romeo Charlie. This is a Hughes OH-6A Cayuse, which was a scout aircraft from the Cold War and Vietnam era. I took a nice tour of the island of Kauai in an aircraft of this basic type. I don't actually remember what type of helicopter this is, and apparently it's a new one for them. They don't have it on their key sheet yet to identify it, and there's no signage. They did say they had a new helicopter here, so maybe this is the one. So what is this? Is this an AH-1? I think that's what it is. And this would be a UH-21 up here. The Flying Banana. The other helicopters that are usually here are not here at the moment. Don't know what they did with them. A sort of a control tower and base operations building made out of perforated steel planking. So they've got something special going on down here.
Stand this time.
This is a Boeing B-17G Flying Fortress. No shortage of B-17s in museums, but they definitely have a couple of nice examples at this one. So I'm told they're filming a movie here. I'm not sure what they're exactly filming, which show. Doesn't look like it consists of more than just climbing a rope ladder for some purpose. And they've got a 5-minute break they announced a few minutes ago, which is why I'm able to walk over this way.
Keep it steady! Kirby!
One more time.
Keep it steady, Kirby! Keep it steady!
Supposedly the movie is something like The End of the World or something. I think that's probably just a working title. Who knows what the movie will be called. Anyway, so a lot of the planes here don't have play cards right in front of them, but they do have the map. And so in quick succession here is a MiG-15. And a MiG-17. This is a MiG-19. And down here is a MiG-21. And down here at the end is another Russian aircraft. The Antonov AN-2. It's a cargo aircraft. And here's a KC-97, which is a aerial refueling craft. Complete with the refueling flying boom. And even though they are at great pains to put a lot of those little spikes on high areas, some of the birds still manage to sit there and crap all over the planes. More on this plane later. This is a HU-16. which is made by Grumman. It's also called the Albatross. And down here is a B-29. Specifically, it's a B-29A, and of course these were called the Super Fortresses.
Look how close they are.
I don't remember if I got this guy already or not, so let's revisit it. This is a Northrop T-38 Talon. This is an F-14. Made by Grumman. It's also called the Tomcat. And this is an F-4. It's actually an F-4E, known as a Phantom II, and here comes another one. This is another F-4. Phantom RF-4C. Down here is an F-15. And this little guy down here is the O2 Vietnam era spotter plane, I think, primarily, and also used for rescue. Used it for fire control, leading in faster jets, helping them target, all sorts of functions. 2 engines, one in the front, one in the rear, so it's a pusher-puller. Here comes another one of these guys. Let's see if I can get it this time. I lost it. So we're back to the KC-97. KC-97L. And here comes another guy. And lost him again. Over at March Field. And then we've got our C-17s parked over here. So this is an F-100 here. And next to it an F-101. Then an F-105. I'm sorry, that was an F-102, and then over here is the F-105. So what are they doing with the movie? Are they still shooting stuff back here? I think I identified this before, but it is a F-4C Phantom II. This is a A-26 here. Made by Douglas, the A-26C is also called the Invader. This is a World War II vintage aircraft. And this is a A-37 here. I think this is the one they called the Tweety Bird, unless I'm mistaken. And this should be an A7. Ling Temco Vault A7D Corsair 2. And this is an A4 made by Douglas. Actual designation of this one's a TA-4J, known as the Skyhawk. And then we have an A1E here. And down here at the end of the row is a Northrop A9A. This was Northrop's candidate for the Air Force's competition in the 70s for a ground attack aircraft. It's supposed to be very durable and rugged, since most of the flight time is going to be to support ground trips through delivery of bombs, missiles, and up-close machine gun fire at low altitudes. There were 12 underwing pylons that could carry almost all the weapons in the Air Force inventory. The Air Force did not choose the A9, however, for production. Instead, it chose the A-10 Warthog, which has gained fame as a tank killer. This is one of only 2 A9s that still exist. So moving on to the next row, we have a B-47. This is, of course, the same model aircraft that they have the nose section of indoors, which was covered earlier in this video, the one used for filming Strategic Air Command. So you can see how much more airplane there is than the little piece they had there inside. It's just pretty much from the back of the canopy to the nose that was present there, and then it didn't even, I don't think, had the complete bottom of the aircraft. And then we've got a B-52 sitting here. Oh, got some aerial activity up here. Oh, there they are. Back there is an F-111. think this is the one that's called the Canberra. I believe this sign's going to tell us that this was made by Martin under license from the British. Yeah, the English Electric Canberra, license built by Martin, the EB-57B, tactical bomber used in the Cold War and Vietnam. There's the B-52 again. And right now we're behind a C-141. I have to get a little distance between me and it. The planes are getting a little bigger again in this area of the field. Aerial refueling craft. It's what essentially replaced the KC-97 that we saw earlier. And these wings on the end, and the fact that the whole thing can telescope, allows it to be flown down to a trailing aircraft to refuel it, and basically flown into position. And down inside of here is the telescoping mechanism that comes out of the shroud. That's the back end of a C-119 there. We'll look at that again in a minute. So here's another view of the front end of the KC-135. Let's go up by the 119. This is Fairchild. They really specialized in these very Spartan yet highly functional and simple, relatively easy to maintain in the field cargo aircraft. Not a lot of frills on them, just good reliable workhorses. I always thought that if I was in the Air Force, I'd probably almost want to be assigned to an aircraft of this type, at least during its era, than many of the other types of aircraft. I would have assumed this to be interesting flying, if not exciting. Going into a lot of interesting locations. C-45 here, made by Beechcraft. Its actual designation is SNB-5. And this is another Fairchild cargo aircraft. While this 119 here was called the Flying Boxcar, the C-130, I'm sorry, the C-123, I believe this one was called the Packet. Let's check the sign. I'm sorry, this is the Provider, the C-123 Provider. And we're right across from a C-131 made by Convair, same company that made the B-36. This one was called the Samaritan. It's a militarized version of the Convair liner Model 340, which was a passenger aircraft. This was the first pressurized twin-engine transport ordered by the military and air transport service. This is a C-54. The C-54 is made by Douglas, and it's called the Skymaster. This is the militarized version of the Douglas DC-4 passenger aircraft. Radar installed inside the nose of this one. I think they could have it, but it's not in this one. Oh, there's a bare spot on that tire. Seen better days. See all those control cables going out to the wing surfaces. Of course, the landing gear tucked up into this space. And there's a nice series of pulleys to take additional control cables and bend them up to those pulleys and then go forward, presumably for engine control and maybe cowlings and things like that. Go down by the C-47 here, which is the military version of the DC-3. This was the VC-47A Skytrain, its proper designation. And things get even simpler with this buggy in regards to its landing gear bay systems. There's just not much of anything in there. Very simple airplane, really. It's another airport type emergency fire truck vehicle with the big high-powered hoses and nozzles. This is an Aero design YU-9A, also called the Aero Commander. I believe this plane was made by several different companies, or maybe the same company that just changed names. This was the type of airplane that Bob Hoover used for many of his aerobatic displays. At least I'm pretty sure it is. Primarily used as a executive transport. Aero Design was a subsidiary of Rockwell. So let's go down this way. There's a couple of more that we haven't seen along this row yet. This guy in blue is a R50-5. No signage on this one. And I've always had a soft spot in my head, or a weak spot in my head, for the C-141. Since my parents were stationed primarily on a series of military air bases during my childhood, one of the bases we were at had a large group of 141s based there, and so I get to see these things taking off and landing all hours of the day. Of course, this is the airplane that Lockheed got a lot of experience building large jet transports, which probably helped them succeed in the competition for the larger transport, which became the C-5, and it's very similar in many of its configurations, but obviously considerably smaller. Still a good-sized cargo aircraft. And this is specifically a 141B, known as the Star Lifter. Now they used to have the cowling opened on one of the engines so you could look inside a little better, and I don't think that's the case right now. Check back on this side. Nope, they're all closed up now. On other visits I've liked to peruse the innards of the engine. And I don't know if they still do it. At one point they used to rent out the inside of this 141. The scouts would use it and camp out in it overnight, and people would have little parties and banquets in it and things like that. There's a bunch of smaller aircraft, some early models of fighter, both propeller and jet, which we can walk along. This guy in the end should be an SNJ-4. We'll see if the sign is accurate. North American SNJ-4, otherwise known as the Texan, used as the training aircraft. And then a BT-13. Then a T-33, which is made by Lockheed. This is actually a T-33A, and it was known as the Shooting Star. And this is a T-37, another one of the Tweety birds. This should be the F-89. Made by Northrop. The F-89 was called the Scorpion. And this is an F-86. Made by North American. This is an L model, known as the Sabre. And it's related to this F-86. This is an H model, also known as the Sabre. This is the one I think most people visualize when they think of an F-86, but they are similar airplanes. That model has the extra, I guess it's a radar dome in the front that gives the front end a different appearance, but otherwise they're pretty much the same basic design. And this should be an F-84. It's an F model. This is known as the Thunder Streak. There's that F-111 again. And this should be an F-84, the Republic F-84C, known as the Thunderjet. And then we're back to places we've been before. We've seen most of the aircraft now. They have several engines laid out here for inspection. I don't know if somebody's doing some work on this or if this has just been sitting out this way for a long time. This is a General Electric I-16 that was the first running jet engine in the free world, designed and built by RAF squadron leader Frank Whittle in England in 1938. It flew in the Gloucester E-28/29 in May of 1941. So this is the General Electric copy built of Frank Whittle's engine. The planes hold up pretty well here, even though most of them are outdoors.
Thank you guys. Thank you guys. This guy. Thank you. This guy. All right. When we come back, it's good. When we come back, it's good. And then we're done with that.
Yeah, they confirmed that the movie was going to be called End of the World. Probably another year or so before it would see theaters. There's a few more planes way out here in the hinterlands. Kind of curious why they decided to film part of a movie here, because it didn't seem like there was any aspect of what they were doing that needed to be filmed here for the scenery. They had a green screen behind it, so I don't think you could see anything. Maybe they were doing something in one of these hangars and just decided to film that scene here while they were at it. So this is a B-25J made by North American called the Mitchell, and I've got a YouTube video from when I had a chance to fly in one of these in Chicago. And this is marked up as a Japanese airplane, but so many of the ones that are marked this way are actually modified versions of American airplanes. And there's no signage on it, so I don't really know if this is actually a Japanese one or not. One way that might tell is to look at the engine tag. Now, it's not unheard of to put American engines in Japanese planes and vice versa, but this does have the Japanese markings on it, so I guess it's the real McCoy. This is one of the aircraft they've got parked out by the road so that people can see it. It's a Republic F-105D Thunder Chief. And that's the Air Force version of the Huey. I guess we'll find out exactly which model it is here in a moment. Right, so it's the Bell UH-1F Iroquois, but its nickname, of course, was Huey, and the 1F model is specifically designed for the Air Force usage, primarily as a personnel transport and rescue helicopter. And this is a Minuteman rocket on loan from the United States Air Force Museum. And they have this memorial park out in front, which I haven't really covered. So that completes my walkthrough of the Marchfield Air Museum. Hope you enjoyed it.